I'm going to make you pay for what you've done to my baby girl.
I walked into my daughter's hospital room and saw her face. That's when I knew I was going to destroy him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pale glow across the sterile white walls. The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils, mixing with something else, something metallic that I recognized immediately. Blood. My daughter's blood. She lay in the narrow hospital bed, her beautiful face unrecognizable beneath the swelling and bruises. Her left eye was completely shut, the skin around it purple and black like rotting fruit. Her lip was split in 3 places, stitched with crude black thread that made her look like a broken doll someone had tried to repair. Her right arm was in a cast from wrist to elbow, and I could see the outline of finger-shaped bruises on her neck, marks that told me he had tried to choke the life out of her. My name is Sergeant Major Retired Diana Westbrook. I served 23 years in the United States Army, 2 tours in hostile territory, and I had seen violence in forms that would make grown men weep. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for the sight of my only child lying broken in that hospital bed. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch her uninjured hand. Her fingers were ice cold. But before we get going, please leave a comment telling me which state or city you're watching from. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and I can bring you more compelling stories. Mama, she whispered, and the sound that came from her throat was barely human, more like the rasp of broken glass against concrete. I forced myself to smile, to keep my face calm, even though inside I was screaming. I'm here, baby. I'm here now. Her name was Simone. Simone Marie Westbrook, though she had taken his last name when they married 3 years ago. Simone Crawford now, though not for much longer if I had anything to do with it. She was 28 years old, a social worker who dedicated her life to helping abused women find safety and rebuild their lives. The irony was so cruel it made my stomach turn. My daughter, who spent her days rescuing others, had become a victim herself. The nurse came in, a young woman with kind eyes and efficient movements. She checked Simone's vitals, made notes on her chart, and adjusted the IV drip-feeding pain medication into my daughter's veins. When she left, she gave me a look. I had seen that look before, in the eyes of military police officers and commanding officers. It was the look that said, "We know what happened here, and we know who did this." I sat in the plastic chair beside the bed and waited. Waited for Simone to sleep, waited for the medication to pull her under. And while I waited, I thought about him. Darius Crawford, 6'3", 230 pounds of muscle and rage. He worked as a bouncer at a downtown club, the kind of place where fights broke out every weekend, and the police knew all the regulars by name. He had a record, nothing serious enough to keep him locked up, just assault charges that had been pleaded down, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. Red flags that I had seen from the moment Simone brought him home to meet me. I had been against the relationship from the start. I knew his type. I had served with men like him, men who confused strength with brutality, men who mistook fear for respect. But Simone was in love, or what she thought was love, and she was an adult. I couldn't forbid her from seeing him. I couldn't lock her in her room like she was 12 years old. So I had watched, helpless, as she fell deeper under his control. The first year of their marriage had seemed fine. He was charming when he wanted to be, bringing flowers, taking her to nice restaurants, posting pictures on social media of them smiling together. But I saw the signs, the way she started canceling plans with me at the last minute, the way she stopped calling as often, the way she wore long sleeves in summer and heavy makeup that didn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. I had confronted her 6 months ago. We were having lunch at a cafe near her office, and I had grabbed her wrist as she reached for her coffee. The sleeve of her blouse rode up and I saw them. Bruises, dark purple fingerprints circling her forearm like a bracelet. "Simone," I had said, my voice sharp with military authority. "What is this?" She had pulled away, tugged her sleeve down, wouldn't meet my eyes. "I fell, Mama. I'm clumsy. You know that." "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." Her voice had gone up an octave, defensive and frightened. I tripped over the rug in the hallway. Darius caught me before I hit the floor. He was trying to help. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But I knew, deep in my gut, with the instinct that had kept me alive in combat zones, I knew. Darius was hurting her, and she was protecting him. If he ever puts his hands on you, I had said, leaning across the table, making sure she heard every word, you call me, day or night. You call me and I will come get you. Do you understand? She had nodded, but I saw the lie in her eyes. She wasn't going to call. She was going to stay with him, make excuses for him, believe his promises that he would change. And now here we were. My daughter beaten so badly that the doctors said she was lucky to be alive. Lucky. What a word to use for this nightmare. The police had come to the hospital before I arrived. They had taken photographs of Simone's injuries, collected evidence from beneath her fingernails where she had scratched him trying to fight back, and filled out their reports. They had asked her if she wanted to press charges. She had said no. When I found out, I had to leave the hospital. I walked outside into the cold night air and screamed into my hands until my throat was raw. Then I went back inside, composed, controlled, and sat beside my daughter's bed. Why? I asked her when she woke up. Why won't you press charges? Simone turned her face away from me. The movement made her wince, and I saw tears leak from her swollen eyes. You don't understand, Mama. Then explain it to me. He didn't mean to. He was drunk. He had a bad day at work. His boss was riding him, and he came home stressed, and I said something that set him off. It was my fault. I closed my eyes, counted to 10, opened them again. Nothing you could say justifies what he did to you. He loves me. He was crying after. He was so sorry. He begged me to forgive him, and he promised it would never happen again. Has he promised that before? She didn't answer. Simone, has he done this before? Not like this, she whispered. He's pushed me a few times, grabbed me too hard, but never like this. This was different. This was an accident. An accident. My daughter's face looked like someone had used it for boxing practice, and she was calling it an accident. I wanted to shake her, wanted to scream at her to wake up and see the truth. But I had dealt with trauma victims before. I knew that pushing too hard would only make her retreat further into denial. Okay, I said softly. Okay, baby, you rest now. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. And while my daughter slept, I made a decision. If she wouldn't protect herself, I would protect her. If she wouldn't press charges, I would find another way. I was going to destroy Darius Crawford. Not with my fists, though God knows I wanted to beat him the way he had beaten her. Not with a weapon, though I had the training and the means. No, I was going to destroy him the way I had destroyed enemy combatants in the field, strategically, methodically, completely. I was going to take apart his life piece by piece until there was nothing left of him but ruins, and he would never see me coming. I left the hospital at dawn. Simone was sleeping, sedated and safe for the moment. I drove home to my small house in the suburbs, the house where I had raised Simone alone after her father died when she was 5. The house was quiet and empty, filled with photographs of better times. Simone as a baby. Simone graduating high school. Simone in her college cap and gown, smiling so bright it hurt to look at. I walked into my bedroom and opened my closet. In the back, behind my dress uniforms and winter coats, was a lockbox. I entered the combination and lifted the lid. Inside were things I hadn't looked at in years. My service weapon, though I kept it unloaded and stored the ammunition separately, my discharge papers, medals and commendations, and beneath all of that, a small notebook. The notebook contained names, contacts, people I had served with, people who owed me favors, people who had skills that most civilians didn't even know existed. I had told myself when I retired that I would never open this notebook again, that I was leaving that life behind. But this was war. A different kind of war, but war nonetheless. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and began making calls. The first person I called was Marcus Tate. We had served together in the same unit, and he had transitioned from military service into private security work. He now ran a firm that specialized in surveillance and information gathering, the kind of work that existed in the gray area between legal and illegal. Diana Westbrook, he said when he answered, his voice warm with recognition. It's been too long. How are you? I need your help. The warmth left his voice immediately. He knew me well enough to know I wouldn't ask unless it was serious. What do you need? I need everything you can find on someone. Full background check. Financial records, phone records, where he goes, who he talks to, what he does every minute of every day. I need to know everything. Who's the target? My son-in-law. There was a pause. Then, carefully, is Simone okay? No, she's in the hospital. He beat her so badly she's unrecognizable. I heard him take a breath, heard the anger in his exhale. Give me his name and any information you have. I'll have a preliminary report to you within 48 hours. Thank you, Marcus. Diana, he said before I could hang up, are you planning something? Yes. Do you need help with more than just information? I thought about that. Thought about what I was planning, about how far I was willing to go. Not yet, but I'll let you know. The second call was to Vanessa Hughes, a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases. We had met at a charity fundraiser years ago and stayed in touch. She had been a JAG officer before going into private practice, and she understood the intersection of military discipline and civilian law. Diana, what's wrong? She asked, as soon as she heard my voice. I must have sounded different, harder. I told her what had happened to Simone, told her about the hospital, the injuries, the refusal to press charges. I need to know what options we have, legal options. If she won't cooperate with the police, is there anything I can do? Vanessa was quiet for a moment, thinking. Legally, your options are limited if she won't press charges. The DA could pursue charges without her cooperation in extreme cases, especially with evidence like medical records and photographs. But it's unlikely they'll push forward if the victim is actively refusing. So he just gets away with it. Not necessarily. There are other approaches, civil suits, restraining orders, other legal mechanisms that don't require her cooperation. But Diana, I have to tell you, the best outcome here is getting Simone to safety and helping her see that she needs to leave him. I'm working on that. Good. In the meantime, send me everything. Medical records, police reports, photographs. I want documentation of everything, even if we can't use it right now. If things escalate, if he comes after her again, we need to be prepared. He won't get the chance to come after her again. Vanessa hesitated. Diana, please tell me you're not planning to do something that will land you in prison. I'm not planning to break any laws. Not any laws I would get caught breaking anyway. The third call was the hardest. I called my daughter's therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, who Simone had been seeing for the past year. Patient confidentiality meant she couldn't tell me anything about their sessions, but I could tell her what I knew. I'm calling to inform you that Simone is in the hospital, I said, my voice professionally neutral. She was severely beaten by her husband. She's refusing to press charges or leave him. Dr. Okonkwo's sharp intake of breath told me this wasn't entirely a surprise. I can't discuss Simone's treatment with you, but I can tell you that I will be visiting her in the hospital today. Thank you for letting me know. Doctor, please, help her see the truth. Help her understand that this will happen again. I'm doing everything I can, Ms. Westbrook, but ultimately Simone has to make her own choices. We can support her, guide her, give her resources, but we can't force her to leave. I knew she was right. I knew she was, But knowing didn't make it any easier to accept. I spent the rest of that day making plans. I pulled up everything I could find on Darius Crawford through public records. His employment history was a mess. Jobs that never lasted more than a year, always ending with him being fired or quitting. His social media was full of aggressive posts, arguments with strangers, thinly veiled threats. He posted pictures of himself at the gym, flexing in mirrors, captions about being an alpha male and not taking disrespect from anyone. I found his address, the apartment he shared with Simone in a rough neighborhood downtown. I drove past it that evening, observing. The building was run down, paint peeling, trash in the parking lot. His truck was parked outside, a lifted black pickup with aggressive tires and tinted windows. Compensation, I thought. Men like him always needed to compensate for something. I didn't stop. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed intelligence first. I needed to know his patterns, his vulnerabilities, his weaknesses. Sun Tzu said that if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. I knew myself. Now I needed to know him. 48 hours later, Marcus sent me the report. It was comprehensive, detailed, exactly what I needed. Darius Crawford was a man living on the edge of financial ruin. He had maximal out credit cards, payday loans, debts to bookies for illegal gambling. He was drinking heavily, spending money he didn't have at bars and strip clubs. His employment at the club was hanging by a thread because he kept getting into fights with customers. But the most interesting part of the report was the last section. Darius was dealing drugs. Nothing major, just selling pills and weed to supplement his income. Marcus had photographs of transactions, times and dates, license plates of buyers. It wasn't enough for a major case, but it was enough for possession with intent to distribute if the police happened to catch him at the right moment. I smiled as I read. This was it. This was how I would start dismantling his life. I made another call, this time to someone I had served with, who now worked in narcotics enforcement. I didn't give my name, just used a burner phone and provided an anonymous tip. I gave them Darius's address, his vehicle description, told them when he would most likely have product on him. Then I destroyed the phone and waited. 3 days later, Darius was arrested. Traffic stop, search of the vehicle, found enough pills in his glove compartment to warrant felony charges. He was processed, arraigned, released on bail that he couldn't afford, and had to borrow money from a bail bondsman at extortionate rates. I watched from a distance, watched him scramble, watched him panic. His job at the club fired him immediately because of the arrest. His truck was impounded and he didn't have the money to get it out. He was unraveling, and it had only just begun. Simone came home from the hospital a week after the incident. Against my advice, against Dr. Okonkwo's advice, against every piece of common sense in the world, she went back to the apartment she shared with Darius. I tried to stop her, begged her to come stay with me, but she refused. "He needs me right now, Mama," she said, her voice muffled by the healing injuries to her mouth. "He's going through so much. The arrest, losing his job. I can't abandon him." I wanted to scream, wanted to grab her and shake her and force her to see what she was doing, but I maintained my composure. "Simone, please, just for a few weeks, stay with me until you're healed. I'm going home." I watched her leave in a taxi, her movements slow and painful, and I felt something inside me harden into cold steel. Fine. If she wanted to stay with him, she could stay with him. But I was going to make sure he had nothing left to hurt her with. The next phase of my plan required more subtlety. I couldn't just destroy Darius directly without risking exposure or legal consequences. I needed to make it look natural, like his life was falling apart because of his own poor choices. Which, to be fair, it was. I was just accelerating the process. I contacted Marcus again. "I need you to do something for me. Darius Crawford has debts, gambling debts, loan shark debts. I need you to buy those debts." "Buy them?" "Yes. Find out who he owes. Offer to purchase the debt. I want to own his financial obligations." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That's going to cost you." "I don't care. Do it." "Diana, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to make sure that every time he turns around, the walls are closing in a little tighter." It took 2 weeks, but Marcus managed to acquire most of Darius's outstanding debts. The man had borrowed from so many sources that his creditors were happy to sell the obligations to someone who would actually pay cash for them. Once I owned the debts, I had power. I could demand payment, could threaten legal action, could garnish any wages he might earn in the future. I started applying pressure. Certified letters demanding payment. Phone calls from collection agencies, legal notices. Every day brought a new financial crisis for Darius, and every day I watched him sink deeper into desperation. I visited Simone regularly, always bringing food and supplies, always checking on her healing. She was getting better physically, the bruises fading, the swelling going down, but emotionally, she seemed to be deteriorating. She was jumpy, nervous, her eyes constantly darting around as if she expected an attack at any moment. "How's Darius doing?" I would ask casually, sipping tea at her kitchen table. "He's stressed," she would admit. "All these bills coming due, people calling all the time. He can't find work because of the arrest. It's making him angry." "Has he hurt you again?" "No, Mama. He promised he wouldn't." But I saw the new bruises, small ones, on her upper arms where they would be hidden by sleeves. I saw the way she flinched when her phone rang. I knew he was still hurting her, just being more careful about where he left marks. I increased the pressure. I made sure that every job application Darius submitted was rejected. A few phone calls to former military contacts who now worked in HR departments, a few words about his arrest record and history of violence, and suddenly no one was hiring him. I made sure his bail bondsman knew he was unemployed and at risk of fleeing, which resulted in more frequent check-ins and more restrictions on his movement. I wanted him to feel hunted, trapped. Desperate, because desperate men make mistakes. The mistake came sooner than I expected. 2 months after his arrest, Darius violated the terms of his bail by getting into a fight at a bar. The fight was caught on security cameras, showing him throwing the first punch, beating another man unconscious. He was arrested again, this time held without bail, because he was now a flight risk. I sat in the courtroom for his hearing, anonymous in the back row. I watched him being led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking scared and small in a way that gave me deep satisfaction. His public defender tried to argue for bail, but the prosecutor painted a picture of a violent man with a history of assault, current drug charges pending, and no stable employment or ties to the community. The judge denied bail. Darius would remain in custody until his trial. I went to visit Simone that evening. She was crying, had been crying for hours from the look of her swollen eyes. "They won't let him out, Mama. They're keeping him locked up. What am I supposed to do?" "You're supposed to leave him," I said gently. "You're supposed to pack your things and come stay with me and start rebuilding your life. I can't abandon him when he's locked up. That would be cruel. Simone, what he did to you was cruel. Look at yourself. You're still healing from what he did to you, and you're worried about him?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. You've never understood. He loves me. He just has problems, and I can help him get better. Once this is all over, once he gets treatment, it'll be different." I looked at my daughter, at this beautiful, intelligent, compassionate woman who couldn't see that she was being destroyed by the man she loved. And I made a decision. If she wouldn't leave him, I would make sure he could never come back to her. I called Vanessa, the lawyer. "I need you to help me with something. Darius Crawford is in custody facing drug charges and assault charges. I want to make sure he gets the maximum sentence possible. That's up to the prosecutor and the judge. But you can help. You have contacts in the DA's office. You know people. I need you to make sure they understand how dangerous he is, how he's a threat to my daughter. I need them to push for the maximum." Vanessa hesitated. "Diana, I have to be careful about my professional ethics here. I can provide information about the domestic violence, can offer to testify about Simone's injuries if needed, but I can't manipulate the legal process." "I'm not asking you to manipulate anything. I'm asking you to make sure justice is done. This man beat my daughter until she was unrecognizable, and she's too traumatized to press charges herself. The system is failing her. We have to work within the system to protect her. Send me everything you have. I'll see what I can do." I sent her Marcus's report, photographs from the hospital, medical records, Dr. Okonkwo's clinical notes with Simone's permission, everything that documented Darius's violence and instability. I made sure the prosecutor's office received anonymous tips about additional crimes Darius had committed, violations that would add to his sentence if convicted. And then I waited. Waited while he sat in jail. Waited while Simone visited him, crying through the glass partition, promising to wait for him. Waited while his trial date approached, The trial was almost anticlimactic. The drug charges were solid, the assault caught on camera. His public defender tried to argue for a plea deal, but the prosecutor, armed with information about his history and the danger he posed, pushed for trial. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding him guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was where I made my move. Vanessa had arranged for me to give a victim impact statement, not as Simone since she still refused to cooperate, but as the mother of a domestic violence victim. I stood in the courtroom facing the judge, and I told the truth. I told about finding my daughter in the hospital, about the extent of her injuries, about her refusal to leave him because he had her so psychologically controlled that she couldn't see the danger. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady and strong, "this man is a threat. Not just to my daughter, but to any woman who is unfortunate enough to cross his path. He uses his size and strength to intimidate and control. He has shown no remorse for his actions, no understanding that what he did was wrong. If he is released, he will hurt someone again. I am begging this court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law." The judge looked at me, looked at Darius, who sat stone-faced at the defense table, and then looked at the sentencing guidelines. "Mr. Crawford, you have been found guilty of possession with intent to distribute controlled substances and aggravated assault. These are serious crimes that warrant serious consequences. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for at least 8 years. 15 years. I felt the tension release from my shoulders. 15 years meant Simone would be 43 when he got out. 15 years meant she would have time to heal, to rebuild, to see the truth. 15 years meant he couldn't hurt her. Darius was led away, shouting, cursing, promising revenge. I didn't flinch. I had faced down enemy combatants with automatic weapons. His empty threats meant nothing to me. Simone was devastated. She sobbed in the courtroom, had to be helped out by the victim advocate. She didn't speak to me for weeks afterward, blamed me for his conviction, even though I hadn't been the one to commit the crimes or testify against him. She believed I had somehow orchestrated the whole thing, which wasn't entirely wrong, though she had no proof. For 3 months, she refused to take my calls, refused to see me. I respected her space, but kept tabs on her through Dr. Okonkwo, who reported that Simone was finally, slowly, starting to process what had happened to her. The distance from Darius, the inability to visit him as frequently because of the prison's remote location, was giving her perspective. 4 months after the sentencing, Simone called me. "Mama, can I come over?" "Of course, baby, anytime." She arrived an hour later, her eyes red but dry. We sat in my living room, the room where she had grown up, surrounded by family photographs. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I filed for divorce." I felt tears prick my eyes, but didn't let them fall. "I'm proud of you." I kept thinking he would change. I kept believing that if I just loved him enough, supported him enough, he would stop hurting me. But Dr. Okonkwo helped me see that I can't change him. He has to want to change, and he doesn't. He blames everyone else for his problems. He blames me. "None of this was your fault, Simone. None of it." She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw my daughter again. Not the broken woman who had been making excuses for her abuser, but the strong, compassionate person I had raised. I know that now. It took me a long time, but I know that now. We talked for hours that day. She told me things I hadn't known, about the abuse that had started small and escalated, about the threats he made if she tried to leave, about the way he isolated her from friends and family. She cried and I held her and we both began to heal. We both. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Darius contested it from prison, tried to claim he deserved part of Simone's assets, but his arguments were weak, and his lawyer was court-appointed and overworked. The judge granted Simone everything she asked for and restored her maiden name. She was Simone Westbrook again. But I wasn't finished with Darius Crawford. The legal system had done its part, but I had promised myself I would destroy him completely. That meant making sure that when he eventually got out of prison, he would have nothing to come back to. I still owned his debts, which had grown considerably with interest and fees. I made sure they were documented, recorded, legally binding. When he got out, those debts would follow him, would make it impossible for him to rebuild his credit, rent an apartment, start over. I made sure that every time a potential employer ran a background check, they would see not just his convictions, but the full scope of his financial irresponsibility. I also made sure that everyone in his family knew exactly what he had done. I sent his mother copies of the medical records from Simone's hospitalization. I sent his brothers photographs of the bruises. I wanted them to know that the man they might defend, might support when he got out, was a monster who beat a woman half his size until she was unrecognizable. Some of them responded with anger, accusing me of trying to destroy their family. But some of them, particularly his sister, reached out to apologize. She told me she had suspected for years that Darius had problems with violence, but hadn't known how to address it. She thanked me for protecting Simone and said she would make sure he knew he wasn't welcome in their family when he was released. That was enough. I didn't need everyone to turn against him. I just needed him to understand that his actions had consequences, that he had lost everything because of his own choices. 2 years after Darius was sentenced, Simone came to Sunday dinner at my house with a guest. His name was Adrian, a teacher at the school where she worked. He was soft-spoken, gentle, respectful. I watched the way he looked at my daughter, with admiration and care, and I watched the way she smiled at him, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Mama, I wanted you to meet someone," Simone said, her hand in Adrian's. "We've been seeing each other for a few months, and it's getting serious." I invited Adrian to sit down, and we talked for hours. He was nothing like Darius. Where Darius had been loud and aggressive, Adrian was thoughtful and calm. Where Darius had demanded attention and control, Adrian asked questions and listened. I saw the way he touched Simone's hand gently, saw the way she leaned into him without fear. After dinner, when Adrian went outside to take a phone call, Simone sat next to me on the couch. "What do you think?" "I think he seems very nice." "He is nice, Mama. He's kind and patient, and he makes me feel safe. I never felt safe with Darius, even before the violence got bad. I was always walking on eggshells, always trying to anticipate his moods. With Adrian, I can just be myself." "I'm happy for you, baby." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know what you did." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I know you had something to do with everything that happened to Darius. The arrest, the debts, the way his life fell apart. Dr. Okonkwo helped me see that the timing was too perfect, too coincidental. And I know you, Mama. I know you would do anything to protect me." I didn't deny it. "Are you angry?" She thought about that. I was. For a long time, I was furious. I felt like you took away my choice, like you manipulated my life. But the more time passes, the more clearly I can see what was happening. I was in danger. He was going to kill me eventually, and I was too deep in the abuse to save myself. She took my hand. "So no, I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. You saved my life." I felt tears run down my face. The first tears I had allowed myself to shed since this whole nightmare began. I would do it again, 1,000 times over. I know you would. That's what mothers do. They protect their children no matter the cost. We sat together in comfortable silence, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My daughter was safe. She was healing. She was building a new life with someone who treated her with respect and kindness. That was all I had ever wanted for her. 3 years later, I walked Simone down the aisle at her wedding to Adrian. She wore a white dress that showed her arms, no bruises to hide anymore, and she smiled like the sun breaking through clouds. As I placed her hand in Adrian's and stepped back, I looked at her radiant face and felt pride swell in my chest. I had kept my promise. I had destroyed the man who hurt her, not with violence, but with strategy and patience and unwavering determination. I had dismantled his life piece by piece until there was nothing left, and in doing so, I had given my daughter the chance to rebuild hers. Darius Crawford still had 11 years left on his sentence. By the time he got out, Simone would have built a life so far removed from him that he would be nothing but a bad memory. She would have a career, a husband, maybe children. She would have happiness and safety and peace, and Darius would have nothing. No money, no prospects, no family support, no future. He would be a middle-aged ex-convict with a violent history and crushing debt. He would live the rest of his life in the ruins I had created, and every day he would remember that it was his own hands that had built those ruins when he chose to raise them against my daughter. That was justice. That was victory, and I had no regrets. The wedding reception was held in a beautiful garden, string lights hanging from trees and flowers blooming everywhere. I danced with Simone, her head on my shoulder, and she whispered, "Thank you, Mama, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved me when I couldn't save myself. You fought for me when I was too broken to fight. You gave me my life back." I held her tighter, this precious child of mine who had survived hell and come out stronger. That's what family does. We protect each other, always. As the sun set and the party continued, I stepped away to a quiet corner of the garden. I took out my phone and looked at a message I had received that morning. It was from Marcus, who still kept me informed about certain matters. DC involved in fight at prison, sent to solitary confinement, lost privileges for 6 months. I deleted the message and put my phone away. Darius was still making the same choices, still choosing violence, still refusing to take responsibility for his actions. Even in prison, he couldn't control his rage. That meant when he eventually got out, he would violate parole within months. He would end up back in prison, and the cycle would continue until he was an old man with nothing left but regrets. I had destroyed him, completely, forever, and I would sleep peacefully every night knowing that my daughter was safe. The music played, laughter filled the air, and I watched Simone dance with her husband under the stars. This was what I had fought for, this moment, this happiness, this future. I had been a soldier once, trained to fight and survive and win at any cost. I had left that life behind when I retired, put away the uniform and the weapons and the mindset. But when my daughter needed me, when she was in danger and couldn't protect herself, I had become a soldier again. Not on a battlefield in some foreign country, but in the quiet war that happens in homes and hospitals and courtrooms. And I had won. Some people might judge me for what I did, might say I overstepped, that I manipulated the legal system, that I should have let justice take its natural course. But those people had never seen their child beaten unconscious. They had never held their daughter while she made excuses for the man who hurt her. They had never felt the helpless rage of watching someone they love destroy themselves because they're too traumatized to escape. I did what I had to do, what any mother would do if they had the skills and resources and determination. I protected my child, and I made sure the man who hurt her would never get the chance to hurt anyone else. That night, after the wedding, I went home to my quiet house. I took off my dress and hung it carefully in the closet. I removed my makeup and let down my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a woman who had fought and won, who had used every tool at her disposal to protect what mattered most. I slept deeply that night, dreamlessly, peacefully. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt lighter than I had in years. The war was over, my daughter was safe, and Darius Crawford was exactly where he belonged, locked away where he could never hurt anyone again. I had destroyed him, not with my hands, though I could have, not with a weapon, though I had the training. I destroyed him with patience and strategy and the kind of cold determination that only a mother protecting her child can summon. And I would do it all again, without hesitation, because that's what love looks like sometimes, not soft and gentle and forgiving, but fierce and protective and absolutely uncompromising. Love that says, "You will not touch my child," and walk away unscathed. Love that burns everything to the ground to keep the people we care about safe. I was Sergeant Major retired Diana Westbrook. I was a soldier. I was a mother. And I had won the most important battle of my life. Simone called me a few weeks after the honeymoon. "Mama, can you come over? Adrian and I have something to tell you." I drove to their new house, a cozy cottage with a garden that Simone was already filling with flowers. They sat me down in the living room, both of them smiling nervously. "We're pregnant," Simone said, tears in her eyes. You're going to be a grandmother." I pulled her into my arms and held her tight, feeling joy flood through me. A grandchild, a new generation, proof that we had survived, that we had overcome, that life could be beautiful again after trauma. "I'm so happy for you both," I said, looking at Adrian, who was beaming with pride. "This baby is going to be so loved." "I want to name her Diana if it's a girl," Simone said, "after you, because you're the strongest woman I know, and you taught me what it means to fight for the people you love." I couldn't speak, could only nod and hold my daughter and feel grateful for this second chance we had been given. 7 months later, I held my granddaughter in my arms for the first time. She was perfect, tiny, and fierce, with a strong grip and Simone's eyes. I looked at her and made a silent promise. I would protect her the way I had protected her mother. I would make sure she grew up knowing she was valued and safe. And if anyone ever tried to hurt her, they would face the full force of a grandmother who had already proven she would burn the world down to protect her family. But that was for the future. For now, I simply held this precious new life and marveled at how far we had come. From that hospital room where Simone lay broken to this moment, holding her healthy baby in a home filled with love and safety. The journey had been brutal. The choices I made had been difficult, morally complex, sometimes questionable. But looking at my granddaughter's face, I knew every decision had been worth it. I had destroyed a monster, saved my daughter, and helped create the foundation for this new life. Darius Crawford was still in prison, would be for many years to come. And when he finally got out, he would find that the world had moved on without him. Simone would be established in her career, happily married, raising her children. She would have built a life so complete and full that there would be no room in it for him, no space for his violence and manipulation. And I would still be watching, still protecting, still ready to do whatever was necessary to keep my family safe. That was my promise, my vow, my purpose. I was a mother, I was a soldier, and I had won. The story could have ended there, with the happy images of new life and fresh starts. But the truth is, trauma doesn't end just because the threat is removed. Simone had years of healing ahead of her, therapy sessions where she worked through the psychological damage of the abuse, moments when she would be triggered by something small and find herself back in that apartment, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid setting off her abuser's rage. I was there for all of it. Every therapy session she wanted me to attend. Every panic attack at 3 a.m. Every moment of doubt when her brain tried to convince her she had made up how bad it was, that maybe she had overreacted. "You didn't overreact," I would tell her, holding her hands, making her look at me. "You survived. You got out. You built a new life. That took incredible strength." Adrian was patient through all of it. He learned Simone's triggers, learned to ask before touching her when she was upset, learned to give her space when she needed it and comfort when she asked. He went to couples therapy with her, learned about trauma responses, became the partner she deserved. Watching their relationship grow was like watching a plant that had been nearly killed by frost slowly come back to life. Tentative at first, fragile, but gradually getting stronger, putting down deeper roots, reaching toward the sun. My granddaughter, young Diana, grew into a confident toddler, then a curious child. She knew nothing of the violence that had almost prevented her existence. She only knew love and safety, and a mother who sometimes cried for no reason she could understand, but who always, always made her feel protected. 5 years into Darius's sentence, Simone received a letter from him. It had been forwarded through the prison system, and she stood in her kitchen holding it like it was a live snake. "Should I read it?" she asked me over the phone. "That's your choice, baby, but you don't owe him anything, not even the time it takes to read his words." She was quiet for a moment. "I think I need to read it, for closure, to see if he's changed at all, if he understands what he did." "Okay, do you want me to come over? Please." I drove to her house and sat with her while she opened the letter. It was several pages long, written in cramped handwriting. I watched her face as she read, saw the emotions flicker across it. Anger, sadness, disgust. Finally, she put the letter down. "He hasn't changed at all. He's still blaming me. He says if I had been a better wife, If I had understood his stress, if I had supported him more, none of this would have happened. He says I destroyed his life by not standing by him after his arrest. How does that make you feel? Honestly? Relieved. I think part of me was worried that he would have some revelation in prison, that he would actually take responsibility, and I would feel guilty for not giving him another chance. But this? She gestured at the letter. This proves that he's the same person he always was. He will never change because he doesn't think he did anything wrong. What are you going to do with the letter? She stood up, walked to the fireplace, and threw it in. We watched it burn together, the pages curling and blackening, his words turning to ash. That's what I'm doing with it, she said. I'm burning it and letting it go. He doesn't get any more of my energy. He doesn't get any more of my time. He's nothing to me now. I hugged her, proud of her strength. This was healing. This was growth. This was my daughter reclaiming her power. 6 years into Darius's sentence, I received a call from Marcus. You need to know something. Darius is up for early parole review. Good behavior in prison, completed some programs. There's a chance he could get out in 2 years instead of the full 8. My blood ran cold. Can they do that? They can. The prison is overcrowded, and nonviolent offenders with good records are being released early. He's not nonviolent. He put my daughter in the hospital. But he wasn't convicted for that. He was convicted for the drugs and the bar fight. Those are the only crimes on his official record. I felt rage building in my chest. What can we do? You can submit a statement to the parole board. As the family member of one of his victims, you have the right to be heard. You can detail his history of domestic violence, provide evidence of the danger he poses. I'll do it. Send me everything I need. I spent weeks preparing my statement. I included medical records, photographs, testimony from Dr. Okonkwo about the psychological impact of the abuse. I included character statements from people who had witnessed Darius's violence and aggression. I made sure the parole board understood that releasing him early would be putting women at risk. Simone added her own statement, the first time she had officially gone on record about the abuse. It was difficult for her, emotionally exhausting, but she did it. I need them to know, she said. I need them to understand that he's dangerous. The parole hearing was held via video conference due to COVID restrictions. I sat in Simone's living room with her and Adrian, all of us watching the screen as Darius appeared in his prison uniform. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were the same, cold, hard, unrepentant. He gave a statement about how he had changed, how he had found religion in prison, how he regretted his past mistakes and wanted a chance to rebuild his life. He talked about the programs he had completed, the good behavior reports from guards, the job offer he claimed to have lined up. Then it was time for the victim statements. Mine was read aloud by a victim advocate, and I watched Darius's face as he heard about what he had done to Simone. He showed no emotion, no remorse, just a blank stare. When Simone's statement was read, detailing the years of abuse, the escalating violence, the hospital stay, I saw something flicker in his expression. Anger. He was angry that she was speaking against him. The parole board deliberated for an hour. When they came back, the chairman spoke directly to Darius. Mr. Crawford, while we acknowledge your good behavior during your incarceration and the programs you have completed, we cannot ignore the serious nature of your history of violence against women. The statements we have heard today paint a picture of a man who poses a significant risk to public safety, particularly to intimate partners. Your parole is denied. You will serve the remainder of your sentence. You may reapply in 2 years. I felt Simone's hand grip mine. She was shaking but smiling. We had won again. 2 more years of safety. 2 more years for her to build her life higher, stronger, further out of his reach. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. He would keep trying for parole every chance he got. And eventually, inevitably, he would get out. The system couldn't keep him locked up forever, not without new crimes. So I started preparing for that eventuality. I made sure Simone had the best home security system money could buy. I taught her self-defense, the real kind, military training that could save her life if he ever came after her. I made sure Adrian knew how to protect his family, how to recognize the warning signs of stalking, how to respond if Darius made contact. And I kept my own skills sharp. I was 60 years old now, retired for over a decade, but I could still shoot straight, could still fight if necessary. I hoped it would never come to that. Hoped that by the time Darius got out, he would be too broken and defeated to try anything. But hope wasn't a strategy. Preparation was. 8 years after his conviction, Darius was released from prison. He had served his full sentence with no parole. I got the notification from the Victim Services Program, and I immediately called Simone. He's out. She was quiet for a moment. Okay, we knew this was coming. We're ready. I want you to stay alert. Don't go anywhere alone. Make sure your security system is armed. If you see him or hear from him, call the police immediately. I will, Mama. I promise. For weeks, I barely slept. I kept my phone on at all times, ready to respond if Simone needed me. I drove past her house regularly, checking for any signs of surveillance or suspicious activity. I was back in combat mode, hyper-vigilant, ready for anything. But nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. There was no contact from Darius, no letters, no phone calls, no showing up at Simone's workplace or home. I had Marcus look into it. Where is he? What's he doing? The report came back 2 days later. Darius had left the state. He had moved across the country, was living in a halfway house, working minimum wage jobs, barely scraping by. The debts I had purchased years ago were still following him, garnishing his wages, making it impossible for him to get ahead. He was surviving, but only just. Do you think he'll stay away? Simone asked when I told her. I think he knows that if he comes back here, if he tries anything, he'll end up back in prison. And more importantly, I think he finally realizes he has nothing to gain. You've moved on. You have a husband, a child, a life he's not part of. There's nothing here for him anymore. She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Keep expecting him to show up. That's normal. Trauma does that. But you don't have to let that fear control you. You've built a good life, Simone. Don't let him take that away from you, even in his absence. It took time, but gradually, Simone relaxed. The hypervigilance faded. She stopped checking over her shoulder constantly, stopped jumping at every unexpected noise. She started to believe that maybe finally, it was really over. 10 years after I walked into that hospital room and saw my daughter's broken face, I sat in her backyard watching my granddaughter play on the swing set. Young Diana was 7 now, bright and confident, and completely unaware of the darkness that had almost consumed her mother. Simone sat beside me, her hand in Adrian's, both of them smiling as they watched their daughter. She had been promoted at work, was leading a program that helped domestic violence survivors. She had taken her pain and transformed it into purpose, using her experience to help others escape the same trap she had been caught in. Do you ever regret it? She asked me quietly. What you did to him. I thought about that, thought about the choices I had made, the lines I had crossed, the power I had wielded. No, I said finally. I don't regret protecting you. I don't regret making sure he couldn't hurt you again. If I had to do it over, I would make the same choices. Even knowing how much it cost you, the money, the time, the moral compromises. Especially knowing that. You're my daughter. You're my whole world. There's nothing I wouldn't do, no price I wouldn't pay, to keep you safe. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. We sat in comfortable silence, watching young Diana play, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a decade. Complete peace. The war was over. We had survived. And the life we had built from the ashes of that nightmare was beautiful. Darius Crawford was alive somewhere, probably still angry, still bitter, still blaming everyone else for his problems. But he was powerless. He had no money, no prospects, no family support. He was alone in a way he had forced on himself through his own violence and cruelty. And we were together. We were strong. We were happy. That was the greatest revenge of all. Not that I had destroyed him, though I had, but that we had rebuilt ourselves into something he could never touch, never diminish, never hurt again. I had been a soldier once, had fought wars in foreign lands for causes that sometimes seemed abstract and distant. But this war, the war I fought for my daughter, had been the most important battle of my life, and winning it had been worth everything. As the sun set over the backyard and Adrian called everyone inside for dinner, I took one last look at the peaceful scene. This was what I had fought for. This moment, this family, this future, and I had won. Some people might judge me for what I did, might say I overstepped, that I manipulated the legal system, that I should have let justice take its natural course. But those people had never seen their child beaten unconscious. They had never held their daughter while she made excuses for the man who hurt her. They had never felt the helpless rage of watching someone they loved destroy themselves because they're too traumatized to escape. I did what I had to do. What any mother would do if they had the skills and resources and determination. I protected my child, and I made sure the man who hurt her would never get the chance to hurt anyone else. The music played, laughter filled the air, and I watched Simone dance with her husband under the stars. This was what I had fought for. This moment, this happiness, this future. I had been a soldier once, trained to fight and survive and win at any cost. I had left that life behind when I retired, put away the uniform and the weapons and the mindset. But when my daughter needed me, when she was in danger and couldn't protect herself, I had become a soldier again. Not on a battlefield in some foreign country, but in the quiet war that happens in homes and hospitals and courtrooms. And I had won. What did you think of this new type of story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this tale, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me to keep creating these wonderful stories. Until tomorrow, all my love.